All right, fam, welcome back to the channel where, yes, we are trying something a little bit different with the lighting. I think this gives my shot a little bit more depth with the lighting behind me. I think the last set of videos I shot in here, a little bit flat, so we're gonna go with this for now. It's a work in progress, but it's progress, and that's what we do on this channel. We make progress. What I want to talk to you about today is something near and dear to really everything I do. Whether it's been as a sports reporter or a video producer, one thing that I really do pride myself on above all else is being prepared for any situation. But being prepared for all types of content creation at all times when it comes to a camera is sometimes easier said than done, even as good as just about every mirrorless camera that comes out is these days. Hopefully you don't find yourself in too many situations where, surprise, you have to shoot both photos and video and you weren't prepared for it or didn't know about it ahead of time. But if that situation does come up, gear does matter. That's why I've really enjoyed having the Sony A7 IV on deck whenever I've needed it over the last 12 months. As I started taking more jobs and making some real money, I realized I needed a B camera, but most important, I needed a backup camera to my Sony A7 III that I use for most of my video work. Being able to shoot in 10-bit color with some of the same color profiles like S-Log3 and S-Cinetone, and matching that pretty easily to the A7 III for $1,000 cheaper, it was really a no-brainer. No, you don't have 4K video at 120 frames per second in this camera body, and there is a crop, a considerable crop, on the 4K 60 footage. However, those things can be worked around, and for the most part, in the right conditions, really most conditions, you won't really be able to tell the difference between the footage coming out of this and the A7 III. In fact, in some ways, the A7 IV can top the A7 III with a few features. For example, focus breathing compensation with Sony lenses. It certainly helps a lot if you're moving around a bit in a talking headshot and relying on focus not to breathe in the background and distract the viewer. And in terms of low light for video, no, it's not the beast that the A7 III is, being able to really crank the ISO up, but in the right situation, it still performs quite well because it is a full frame camera and Sony does a good job with most of their sensors shooting in low light. Plus, how many times do you really need to crank up that ISO to levels like 12,800 where the A7 III really shines? If you light properly, the second dual native ISO, second base ISO of the A7 IV at 3200 should be enough to light even some pretty dark scenes when you need it. On the photo side of things, with the A7 IV, it's nice to have 33 megapixels, which is like that sweet spot in not having too few megapixels to crop in, like say the A7 III or some cameras that have a 12 megapixel sensor, or even 20 feels a little bit low sometimes, but 33 is more than enough and not quite enough like the A7R line where you're getting some massive file sizes with your photos, and that can really bog you down in the editing process. Of course, with this camera body, you've also got the dial and the switch up here that allows you to go from photo mode to video mode to S and Q, a slow and quick mode, all pretty quickly. And then you've got your 3 presets in each of those modes. So if you're really looking to change from photo to video on the go, you can do it quite simply and have a lot of presets in there. So you're not fumbling over frame rates and shutter and ISO. It can all be pre-dialed in to whatever you need it for on the go. All of the versatility in this camera has produced really a year's worth of quality content for me. Most of what you'll see on my social media pages, it's travel photography, it's fun stuff, but from street photography to high quality video clips and some of the short form content that I've done on TikTok and Instagram, this camera has absolutely crushed it. I recently took a trip to the Pacific Northwest during Christmas, and the camera performed just fine in some really cold, snowy, icy, rainy weather. Got a little wet, handles it just fine. I also took a few trips out to Arizona 3 times last year. Did not see that coming, but it happened, and guess what? Did not overheat. Shot a lot of video, shot even more photos, never had a problem. And in terms of reliability, it went to Italy with me. It went to Switzerland with me on a fabulous vacation with my wife, and it was as reliable as you could ask for. Every single day, taking it out, Didn't miss any shots I wanted to take, didn't miss any videos I wanted to take. I have just loved this camera for content creation and really everything it offers. And while everything I just mentioned was pretty hobbyist and done for personal photography, and I know this camera and the A7 line can be marketed as more of an entry-level body, we all know it performs well professionally as well. I did several events with this camera. I did several family portrait shoots with this camera. The eye autofocus is so intuitive and it performs so well, and it is such a dream to use. And as far as professional video, like I mentioned before, it fills in quite nicely in a pinch. I recently shot a wedding solo, and while I had the A7S III handheld, I threw the A7 IV on a gimbal for a few shots, plugged it in with the rest of the A7S III footage. Looked spectacular. Still, a lot of these things are probably things you already know, because this probably isn't the first video you've watched about the Sony A7 IV. What I love about cameras and tech and gear is finding out how I can push it even further. So I'm gonna finish this video with 3 things that I really love about this camera that I think are somewhat overlooked and you might wanna think about in terms of taking your content creation to the next level while using the A7 IV. The first thing to take advantage of is crop mode, basically taking the A7 IV from full frame to an APS-C camera. It happens naturally when shooting 4K at 60 frames per second. While some see this as a hindrance, I like to look at the glass half full. When you go into crop mode, you can push into your shot and still get a 4K image thanks to the oversampled readout from the sensor. That said, it's not a feature I would abuse too much. I have found that when you try to get flexible in post with that oversampled image in the crop mode, I think you get a little bit more noise and grain introduced to your shot and the image may fall apart a little bit quicker. However, these are things that I don't think anyone notices when posting on social media, especially Instagram or TikTok. And in a well-lit situation, if you're keeping it pretty basic, I think you're just fine with the image. And what I think gets overlooked most when it comes to crop mode is it can really make your prime lenses a lot more versatile. I'm someone that loves to shoot with a prime lens. I love to shoot wide open. I love that shallow depth of field. I think it's the type of image that clients look for a lot. I think it's something that really grabs attention on social media. But we all know the downside of a prime lens is it's not a zoom lens. It doesn't zoom in on its own. You have to move around a little bit. However, when you take advantage of crop mode, especially if you're shooting at something like 4K 24 frames per second or 4K 30, really anything except 4K 60 that forces you into crop mode, you now have options to play with. Say I'm shooting in 4K at 24 frames per second with a 35mm prime. Well, not only can I shoot at 35, but when I activate crop mode, that 35 becomes about a 50mm focal length. That essentially gives me 2 lenses to now shoot with. Say it's a 20mm lens. Now you've got a 20 and about a 30. A 24 gives you about a 24 and a 35. So it really does a lot for your prime lens and can make you a lot more versatile when you're out and about shooting with a prime lens and want to capture a lot of content from different ranges. The next feature I've really come to enjoy is the S&Q slow and quick mode, which basically allows you to shoot slow motion video within the camera. You don't have to slow anything down in post. Like I said earlier, this camera does not shoot 4K at 120 frames per second. If you want that frame rate, you have to bump down to HD. And if you're shooting in regular movie mode at 120 frames per second, you can only get 8-bit color. However, if you use the S&Q mode, you can shoot at 120 frames per second in HD quality and still get 10-bit video, and it's quite a solid workaround, especially shooting in S-Log3. I'm still able to grade the footage quite nicely, even though it's not 4K and it's in HD. Besides, any social media platform like TikTok and Instagram, most of them aren't showing 4K video anyway. It's all 1080, so you might as well frame the shot like you want it, put it out. You don't have to resize anything in post. It is just there, straight out of camera, slap a LUT on it, grade it real quick. Your high quality video is ready to roll. It's one of those things that, yes, compared to the A7S III and being able to get 4K 10-bit 120 frames per second with a minimal crop, Yeah, the A7S III is awesome, and that is why it's a beast of a camera. However, this is not a huge compromise in my opinion. I don't know how many times you need 120 frames per second, and in 4K, you probably don't. You can get away with it. I recommend trying it. And finally, the third feature that is purely extra and totally not what you buy a $2,500 camera for. It's being able to use it as a sick webcam. This thing is plug and play from the USB-C port on the camera to the USB-C port on your laptop. It is recognized right away. The camera knows what it's doing as a webcam. You open up Zoom or whatever you're using to video conference, and guess what? You've got the cleanest, best looking video, bar none, in your Zoom meeting. So with all that said, I want to know what you love most about the A7 IV and how you use it most. Again, I think it's perfect for everyday, not overly specialized content needs. And it's a perfect bridge from just getting into cameras to moving on to pro cameras and using this camera as a pro camera if that's what you want to get into. The big point is, and the thing I hope you take away most, is that it's not a camera that should hold you back from anything that you want to do. If you can't create high quality content in terms of video or photos with this thing, I think it's time to reevaluate some other things like lighting or audio or what you may be doing wrong, because I think this thing has all the tools to make whatever you want. As always, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. And if you didn't make it this far into the video, thanks anyway. Every little bit helps as we continue to grow the channel. Speaking of which, be sure to hit the like button if you found this video helpful at all, and subscribe for future content. That'll do it for now. We'll see you guys next time.